Welcome to episode 8 of season 5 of the Filmmaker Film Watcher podcast.
Woo!
I'm filmmaker Richard Di Gregorio.
And I am film watcher Greg Ralph.
So this episode, we're going to get a little bit mysterious.
Yeah, so this is whodunnits of interest, kind of like persons of interest.
That's right.
But that have a few notable features, shall we say?
Have you loved the mystery genre over time? Have you
This is one of my genres.
This is one of your genres.
Yeah, so I was a bit surprised before we came on mic that you hadn't realised that our first film, which is 1945's And Then There Were None, is actually an Agatha Christie story.
No, but the thing is, I did get into Agatha Christie films. I like Death on the Nile
But
and
the books?
Evil Under the Sun. Yeah, the books, but I The Man in the Brown Suit, I think it is.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
But I didn't know that. I'd never heard of And Then There Were None.
It's one of her most famous.
Really?
Her most famous ones, in books as well as movies and so on, would be Death on the Nile, Murder on the Orient Express, And Then There Were None, and maybe The Murder of Roger Ackroyd.
Evil Under the Sun is not one of them?
Well, that's because it's been made once or twice as a film.
Yeah.
But if you ask people to name Agatha Christie, it might get named. Yeah. There's a good chance those 4 will be named. Two of them, because of their plots, but also because they've been filmed so much, so high profile. And the other 2 because she did things that really challenged the genre.
Yeah.
Which we'll come to. Because we maybe should talk about what the other films are first as well.
Right.
But I'm getting excited. This is my thing. I read all the Agatha Christies. I read all 70-something Agatha Christies in my teen years.
Yeah.
I just went through them.
Well, the first film we're going to discuss is obviously this film, And Then There Were None, which is from 1945.
Yes. And then we're going to come a bit closer to our own timeline, and we're going to talk about 2001's Gosford Park.
And then we're going to finish off on 1973's The Last of Sheila.
So we're jumping all over the place.
We really are.
But within this whodunit kind of genre.
Yeah. Look, I liked it, but I never loved the genre, and we'll get into why.
So who are you and what are you doing on my podcast?
Well, I liked guessing, the guessing games and whatnot of what,
And look, just before we get into particular films, one of the things about this genre is it's actually sort of harder to do well in film than in book. So someone like Agatha Christie can sprinkle clues through conversation and they're there and you pick up on them or you don't. In a film, there's 2 things they can really do badly. One is casting. That person, who's a nothing kind of character is actually someone quite well known, so there's more to their story. Yeah. That person has played innocents who, suddenly have more to them before in the past. And the second thing is because it's a visual medium, that the risk is you make something too obvious so that the audience picks up on it rather than what you're reading on your own.
It's
hard.
It's difficult. Yeah. It would be very difficult because you're right. The casting is everything. You're looking at everybody.
Yeah,
everybody, and usually the most obvious one that you think might have done it is not the one that does it.
No,
so
but sometimes again, it's the least. It's going to be the least obvious character, and so they're not doing much. Oh, they're the murderer, and 8, 9, 10 times out of 10, they are.
They are. Yeah, that's right.
I watch a lot of this stuff.
Well, why don't you kick us off with the first film, Greg?
Never heard of it. So, And Then There Were None. So this. First of all, do you know that this book has actually had 3 different titles?
No.
So, And Then There Were None was the title invented for the American market because the original title contained... There's not many words I will not say on this podcast or anywhere. So I'm going to say the N-word and hope people know what that means. So originally it was called 10 Little N-Words.
Really?
Until 1985, which I find astounding in the UK market.
The book was And Then There Were None?
It was never filmed under that title. Actually, maybe once.
Yeah.
Then it got changed to be less offensive to 10 Little Indians. And then...
Which I think is quite offensive in its way as well.
It's probably in the world of, scales of offensiveness.
That's right.
Maybe it's slightly less offensive.
Yeah.
And maybe it's become more known to be offensive over time, whereas N-word, I think, is really... quite odd. And now it's universally known as And Then There Were None. But anyway, how about talk about the film?
Well, talk about the film, but I just want to make sure we're clear here that we are talking about mysteries. We don't want to give too much away in these films.
Oh, I hate it when people do that.
No, so I don't want to do that. So, there
aren't a lot of butlers in these
just want to be
films.
very, there are.
Oh, there are actually. Yeah, there are
I just want
butlers.
to make sure we're not giving too much away.
Okay. This Agatha Christie novel was actually my first whodunnit that I read at the tender age of 10, under its less fortunate title that I alluded to before. And its intriguingly clever plot urged me on to quickly devour her other 65 crime novels and 15 short story collections in the space of about, 8 years. Around the world, this one has been made into at least 6 feature films, 2 telemovies, a TV miniseries, a BBC radio production, a graphic novel, a board game, which I'd quite like to see, 2 computer games, and an interactive web series. Now, many of the films and TV shows, like the one we're talking about now, were made as star vehicles of their day and were, shall we say, of variable quality. This black and white 1945 version was the first, after a successful West End play the previous year. I was sure I'd seen it, but I think now that I might have been confusing it with some of its less worthy cousins. And it's a good chance that you, listening to us now, already know the story, but just in case. 8 strangers are invited for the weekend by a mysterious host, UN Owen, to a remote island, or other places in other films and so on, but a remote place, and there's also a married couple hired as butler and housekeeper. So there is a butler. After dinner, a record is played that accuses all 10 people of past murders for which they were never found accountable. The recorded voice goes on to pass sentence of death on them all. And then, one by one, they are killed in accord with a nursery rhyme about the progressive elimination of 10 characters, providing clues to each manner of death. And as the bodies mount up, a central decoration featuring the 10 nursery rhyme characters is itself culled each time someone dies. At first, the guests suspect that UN Owen is a joke name for their unknown host, who is hiding somewhere nearby to pick them off. But their gaze turns inward as they suspect that their murderous host may in fact be one of their dwindling number. Now, there are actually 2 endings to the story as well as 3 titles. An original unhappy ending and a happier one that Christie wrote for the stage play. And different versions use different endings. And we're not going to spoil the 1945 version by telling you who done it or even which ending is used here. In what has become tradition with this story, when it's produced as films, etc., there's a star-studded character cast to play Christie's archetypes, including Walter Huston, Oscar winner for The Treasure of Sierra Madre, and patriarch of Oscar-winning descendants John and Angelica Huston, as the Doctor. Barry Fitzgerald, Oscar winner and nominee for Going My Way, the only actor ever to be nominated twice for the same role, as the Judge. Richard Haydn, who you may remember as Max in The Sound of Music, he's the butler. Dame Judith Anderson, once Broadway's foremost Shakespearean actress, and Mrs. Danvers in 1940's Rebecca, as the spinster. Louis Hayward, the movie's first Simon Templar, or the Saint, as the explorer, and Roland Young, the movie's first Topper, as the policeman. And veteran actor Sir C. Aubrey Smith, captain of the Hollywood cricket team, who also played for England in the late 19th century as the General, and there are others. Director René Clair started out in silent movies in Paris, and initially resisted the introduction of sound. And in this Christie film, you can see his strongly visual approach with a light comic touch. It begins with silent vignettes on the island boat trip to illustrate each guest's character, and we have to wait 3 minutes before there's any dialogue, which actually is, what a quiet place. Claire uses many close-ups, including where each male guest introduces himself directly to us. And there are other striking images with a great sense of fun, such as a dead man's boots clearly visible to us in the foreground, while other guests are obliviously debating that this victim is their murderer. A tangled ball of wool dropping from an upstairs landing to lead to the latest body, and someone spying on someone else through a keyhole who is spying on someone spying through their keyhole, and they in turn are being watched by someone who themselves is being watched by the first person. If you know Christie's plot, which I'm not going further into, there are also some fine visual jokes, such as focusing on some of the future victims as their verse of the nursery rhyme and manner of death is sung, and where the crime is literally laid at the feet of the murderer. But Ricardo, I'm pretty sure that this story was new to you, and I know you actually watched the colorized version, whereas I watched the original black and white.
Yes.
How'd you go?
I didn't pick it. I look at that and I go, well, if I didn't pick it, that means it was quite difficult to sort of work out. Maybe I didn't get the clues or whatnot.
Oh, because you're so good.
You know, well, I'm not. but I think it's a good mystery if that's the case.
Yep.
I'm going to say it was a slow burn for me into this film. I was sort of finding it a bit ponderous to begin with.
I actually think it's a hard story to pace.
Yeah.
You can do it too slow or too quick.
Well, yeah.
And you've got a lot of deaths to get through.
There's a lot. I thought some of the visual elements were really good. I love the keyhole sequence and whatnot, and also the introductions to us as well. I thought that was really, really clever. So filmically, I really appreciated what the director was doing.
Yep.
But one thing and I'll probably talk about this in The Last of Sheila as well, is the lack of emotion coming from the characters about deaths. It's like somebody can die and they're like, oh yeah, it's just somebody's dead. Let's move on. Let's work it out. And I sort of go, well, where's the emotion? There's someone dead.
Yeah, but you have to understand the genre, right?
No, but but somebody's dead, Greg.
Yeah, I know, but you see, you're thinking this is a crime story, and it's not. A whodunit is a puzzle. It's a game, right?
Yes, but do the actors have to be directed to just not give a damn about who these characters are?
But you think of all the Agatha Christie films, right?
Yeah.
You think, I think you and I both love the Peter Ustinov Poirot films, right? Death on the Nile, Appointment with Death, Evil Under the Sun. He was the best Poirot. Yeah. I think he was, but it's done by a comic actor, and it's done to be funny. And all the other characters, David, let's talk about Death on the Nile, for example.
I'm not talking about the detectives.
Okay.
I'm talking about
the normal people.
The normal people.
Okay, so who was upset particularly in Death on the Nile?
I don't remember. I haven't seen it for a long time.
So Maggie Smith, it's played for comedy. Whodunits as a game kind of story work best when there's a comic touch. Maybe it's a bit camp. Maybe it acknowledges its own lack of reality. In books, it can be a bit different. In books, I think more than films, one of the things is that there's kind of a social order. They're often in a place. So this is a guest house. It might be, in an office. It might be a family reunion, whatever it might be. And so there's an established order, and then death intrudes and completely disrupts the social order.
Yes.
And at the end, social order is restored to a point because the mystery's solved, the bad people, are punished, and the others can go on with their lives. It might have been disrupted. It might not be the same old world that it is, but it can be a bit deeper and darker. But by and large, that doesn't happen in films.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because
I know you haven't seen Glass Onion, but you have seen Knives Out.
Yes, I have.
There is a bit more emotional depth to that. That's a bit of progression of the genre. Yeah. But it's not what the genre's been.
I'm not after just, but I'm after something, just a little bit of just a little bit of devastation that somebody's...
But in this one...
something.
No, but in this one, they're not particularly upset until it starts to become a paranoia rather than...
then they start...
upset.
When they're fearing for their own lives, that's when they show the emotion.
Yeah.
But they don't care about anybody else.
It's kind of still a game.
But they're both... But I find all the characters, just a very self-absorbed character.
Yeah, but they're also archetypes. They're not people. You have to understand that. And when it's done as a light comedy, they're not people. Right?
Yeah.
They're archetypes. You've got the general, the spinster, the doctor, the butler, the housekeeper, the beautiful young woman, the explorer, the cop, the judge, and I've forgotten someone because it's only 9. Oh, the kind of playboy character.
Yes.
They're not meant to be serious. The guy who plays the playboy character, Prince Nikito, is played by someone called Misha Auer. Mm-hmm. Now, I guess that's how you say it. I didn't actually know who he was. But when I looked him up, I found out he was in a very well-known comedy that I'd never seen from 10 years prior called Hell's a Poppin', where he plays the same kind of character.
Yeah.
He's a spongy guest of some kind of European royalty who's sponging off the multi-millionaire American host.
I thought he was overacted.
Yeah, he was, but it's not a drama.
No, I know it's not a drama.
And he makes a joke about it. I hadn't realised at the time. He makes a joke in the when he's playing the nursery rhyme and singing it.
Yes.
At one point, he says something like, "I'm always a guest," and that's obviously a jokey reference back to that. It's light entertainment, even though there's death. It's light entertainment.
Well, I watched the colorized version. I really wish I had watched the black and white version.
I saw bits of it, and
because it was
horrible.
Dreadful.
And the colours were
changing and everything.
Skin tones were horrible.
Oh, horrible! The Amazon Prime version, which is on there at the moment, is the color version, and it doesn't do any benefits to the lovely cinematography, which I know is there, and black and white cinematography. But look, it was okay.
Yep.
It was okay.
Yep.
I didn't love it.
And this is much, much more my genre than yours.
Yeah, it is.
No, it is.
Yeah, it
full
is.
stop.
It is full stop. Yeah. So I didn't love it. I thought it was okay.
I don't expect people to get upset by death by and large.
No.
Sorry, in real life I do.
No, hang on. Hang on a minute. You're getting me wrong. I'm not saying they want them to be crawling over. Oh my God, that's what. I'm not asking for them to be deeply emotionally, but to show something, a little inkling of it.
It's a parlour game. Have you ever done a murder party?
Yes.
And when the character dies in
a murder party is very different.
No, it's a parlour game.
No, it's different.
No, it's not.
It's very different to actually watching a film or trying to get invested in characters. And when there's a death, it's wow, they're dead. Let's look at that. Next.
No, you are coming from the wrong starting point. You're saying, I want to get invested in characters. No, you don't know who done it. It's about the mystery and pitting your wits against the filmmaker and or author. That's what it's about.
Yeah, but
being really smug like I get when you get it right, and if it's halfway decent, because sometimes obviously it's not, but it's halfway decent, and like Agatha Christie when I was reading the books, you doff your cap to them and say, touche, you really got me there, and that was clever.
Well, touche.
Now, I want to ask you a question. Did you spot the Australian connection in this film?
No, not at all.
Dame Judith Anderson. She's an Adelaide girl.
Really?
Originally, yeah, if you go back far enough, who made it big over in the States. She began acting in Australia before she went to New York in 1918.
Wow.
And then really established her reputation as a Broadway actor. And then, of course, she was the first big Mrs. Danvers in Rebecca.
Wow, in Hitchcock's Rebecca.
Yeah.
Wow.
I also want to tell you something else. Because this is my genre, and I did a bit of reading around it and so on. And I don't want to spoil other ways in which she really, created it or, kind of tricked the form. But I'm not going to say we're not going to plot here, but what she did here was she wrote a story where there is no detective.
No, there's not.
Same as there's no detective in the murder of the Last of Sheila, but it's about a group of people who find themselves in a perilous situation where they have to try and solve it for their own sakes, right? And in this place where they're all gathered by a mystery host who's not really someone they know, and where they're trapped and they're getting picked off. Now, in fact, what I found out is there's a very little known 1934 film. So 10 years prior to this, to a play, I'm not sure when I think the book was published about 37, 38, 39, whatever it is, the Christie book. But there was this little film that was on stage in America, and before that was a novel by a husband and wife writing duo, which is actually very similar. And I watched it. It's literally about an hour and 3 minutes. It's on Vimeo, and it's called The Ninth Guest, where there are 8 guests, there's a few staff who are minor characters, and the 9th guest is death. And for a film that, is 1934 and a bit kind of, rough now, hasn't been restored or anything, I found it actually surprisingly suspenseful. And there it'd be interesting if you watch that to think if you thought the characters were more kind of real, if you like, or, had a bit more real emotions. But it's about these 8 people from New York criminal society who are not terribly nice people and who don't necessarily even like each other, who get invited to this place and then get picked off every hour. There's no nursery rhyme element. And some of the ways that are set up to kill people, some of them are fairly standard, but some of them, it's really well done in this really beautiful black and white 1930s New York apartment. Penthouse. Right. So if you get a chance, just if you've got access to Vimeo, it was free. The Ninth Guest, 1934.
Okay.
So did you love this film?
I didn't love it. So
what are you going to give it?
I'm going to give it 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
It was okay. I appreciated it.
Yep.
But I didn't love it.
You know it won awards?
What awards did it win?
It won the Golden Leopard and the inaugural Best Direction Award at the 1946 Locarno International Film Festival. So this is basically your Italian heritage, Ricardo.
Is it really? Right. Well,
I'm going to claim that.
Hang on. But I do appreciate it directorially. I think it did some interesting things. I think the director did really, for the time, did some really interesting shots and was in quite inventive with a few of the shots. So I appreciate that.
Yep.
But and I like the ending.
Yep.
I really like the ending as well. I thought that was really good.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I think this is really more my genre than yours.
Yeah.
You love horror. I do not.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually think it's a very, very clever book. I think it is hard to pace well. And maybe I'm also viewing this through a lens where I've seen some of the really bad ones are done very badly. The one in a remote hotel in the middle of the Iranian desert, the one in an African safari with Donald Pleasance and so on. This, I think, does a pretty good job of it. And I do like the visual inventiveness and the acknowledgement that it's fun. Some of these others are a bit more kind of serious or something. This is, I think, I like the sensibility here.
Yeah.
It's the first time it was done, so it was fresh. And I think it's been done well. And for me, it's a 7.
Okay, great.
Okay, well, let's move on to our second film. We're going to go from the remote island to another almost cliche of the murder mystery whodunit, which is the country mansion. Why don't you tell us about 2001's Gosford Park?
Gosford Park is a 2001 British mystery comedy drama written by Julian Fellowes, who went on to create the hugely popular Downton Abbey TV series. And it's directed by Robert Altman, who also directed classic films such as Shortcuts, The Player, and Nashville. Set in 1932 at Gosford Park, a grand country house in England, the film follows the events surrounding a weekend party hosted by Sir William McCardle, Michael Gambon. When someone is found murdered, the authorities are called in to investigate. As the investigation progresses, it becomes clear that everyone at Gosford Park had a motive for killing the victim. The servants, who are often overlooked by the elite, also have secrets and hidden agendas. As the mystery unfolds, the film explores the complex relationships between the guests and the servants and the ways in which class and social status can influence human behaviour. The film has a stellar ensemble cast that includes, here we go, Helen Mirren, Aileen Atkins, Charles Dance, Stephen Fry, Michael Gambon, Richard E. Grant, Derek Jacobi, Kelly MacDonald, Jeremy Northern, Clive Owen, Ryan Philippe, Maggie Smith, Kristen Scott Thomas, and Emma Watson, but I'm sure I even missed some here. Each actor gives a nuanced and memorable performance here, and the film's large cast is superbly handled by Altman. Now, many find Stephen Fry's character a little too over the top, but I think he's fine. I think it's a bit harsh, quite honestly. I think he actually gives a bit of life to the film. It's beautifully shot, with its common use of deep focus, which is a technique which allows the viewer to see both the foreground and the background elements in sharp focus, which creates a real sense of realism. His direction is just wonderful. His style is known for its use of long takes, multiple storylines, and complex ensemble cast. In Gosford Park, he uses these techniques to create a really immersive world that feels both real and theatrical. It's hard to achieve. Its production design is also just glorious. I just love this era. Now, Gosford Park was critically acclaimed with praise for its ensemble cast, Altman's direction, and Fellowes' screenplay, which won the Best Screenplay at the Academy Awards, and it really tightly explores the themes of class, privilege, and deception, but it's also got some real good humour as well. It's not a dour affair. It was also nominated for 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. Greg, what did you think?
I'm not entirely sure.
Really?
Actually, yeah. I saw this film when it first came out.
Yeah, so did I.
And I remember being very excited about it because I thought, oh, a really classy, country mansion whodunit. I actually don't think this film's a whodunit.
No, you know what? It's more Downton Abbey than a mystery.
Oh, it's very much Downton Abbey.
You know what I mean?
And
yeah.
I actually think, I didn't try and Google this, but I think all the downstairs sets, I think they're the Downton Abbey sets.
Yeah, right.
Like I recognise windows and doors, like this is tragic, windows and doors and passageways and so on. I might have had a bit of, rework. But in fact, Downton Abbey was going to be a spin-off from this.
Right.
And then it sort of took on its own life. I think it started about 10, 12 years later or something. And I remember when I saw it, I was disappointed because it wasn't at all what I expected. Now, that happens with films and their marketing and so on. And when I came to watch this, I thought, you know what? I cannot remember anything else about the story, the film, anything, except that impression I walked away with. So when I started watching it, I even forgot Stephen Fry was in it. And I like Stephen Fry.
Yeah.
I have problems with his performance, not because it's his performance, but I think it's kind of a jarring element. It is funny, but in terms of the story, I don't know. It jarred for me.
Well,
and if anything,
it all very plays naturalistic, and all the actors are very naturalistic in this.
I think it's an acting powerhouse. I
It is.
really do.
It is.
And beautiful look.
Oh.
It won Best Original Screenplay, but it won over Amelie and Memento.
Yeah. Oh wow. Wow. That's
And
huge.
I reckon you could really argue that. Like, it was very well done, but I'm sorry, I don't think
Well,
it's
there's
great.
so much. No, it's very tightly done, and there's so much going on with the screenplay. You can't tune out.
Well, actually, I had a bit of a problem because I could watch it on one of our local streaming services, and I've got the DVD, and neither version had subtitles, and there's so much overlapping dialogue.
There's so much.
And particularly in the early stages, I found I wasn't quite following things. And so there's a storyline about one of the characters, not a big storyline, who had an affair and had an abortion, is now being blackmailed over it. Totally passed me by until I read about the film afterwards. I just didn't get it.
Yeah, there's so much of that going on, and I think that's where its cleverness is. It is very cleverly, tightly put together in its screenplay. Oh no, I really love it. I think it's very good.
Do you know how Altman does the voices?
What voices?
How he does the sound recording.
Oh, how?
So this is a technique apparently invented when he made A Wedding back in 1978. What he does is, rather than use a typical boom mic, the one hanging over people and so on to get the dialogue, he actually had all the actors and actresses wear portable microphones. So that way he could get the effect of the overlapping dialogue. Those separate soundtracks.
Okay, sure.
And I wonder if that's kind of what, because I'm getting older, I wonder if that's created a problem here. If it had subtitles, I know, people are for and against subtitles, but it would have helped me, particularly in the early stage, work out what the hell all these overlapping voices are actually talking about and what I might want to pay attention to. I mean, it's interesting here, if there's anything remotely resembling a detective figure in the story, it's the housemaid, Kelly MacDonald.
Yes,
I mean,
he's very good.
Yeah, Stephen.
In fact,
she always is.
good,
But Stephen Fry, he's a bumbling detective who completely disregards and spoils clues. His offside of PC, I think he's PC Dexter, is a bit more capable, but not that great. She's the one who solves it because she has access to things that the cops don't. I mean, the strength here of the film for me is, look, acting powerhouse. I don't know that I'm that interested in the story, except that it is really interesting. And we saw more of this in Downton Abbey later on, how you've got the upper class and the servants.
That's what I love. I love that aspect of it.
So you have a servant in the room. People talk about really private stuff.
Yes.
And the servants are there and they're completely disregarded because they're not important or they're functional. They're
well, there's one line where some of the guests are talking together and the lady says, "Oh, listen, somebody's here," and he goes, "Oh, that's just the butler. That's There's nobody there."
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it?
And meanwhile, not all of them, but some of the staff then go and tell other staff who then go and tell the person they serve. So this is actually a very effective gossip conduit that can ruin people's reputations, and everyone's oblivious to it.
That moment when Emily Watson speaks up at the table.
Inadvertently.
You get that feel. That's a huge moment, and you just go, "Wow, what did you just do?"
And everyone knows exactly what it means.
Well, exactly, but it's set up so well that it makes you feel that when she does it. It's like, it's very clever and very, very well done.
Well, I don't think, actually, but I'm a great fan of Robert Altman. Now, that might be heresy.
That is heresy.
So I looked at his CV on IMDb to say, well, what have I seen? And I reckon I've seen 4, maybe 5 films.
You didn't like Shortcuts?
I've never seen it.
Oh, great. I love Shortcuts.
So I've seen Gosford Park, obviously. I've seen it twice now. I've seen...
The Player.
The Player is the one I do love.
Yeah.
That's the exception. The Gingerbread Man, Kenneth Branagh.
I didn't see that one.
I saw it when it came out in the movies, and I just thought Branagh was bad accent, and just not a very interestingly told story.
Well, it was badly reviewed at the time.
A Prairie Home Companion.
I never saw it.
Wasn't that Enchanted? I was keen because good actors, and I thought this might be an interesting story. It's Garrison Keillor, who I knew a little bit about. I was a bit bored, and I I'm not sure
He
if
did MASH, didn't he, as well? I think he did MASH as well, the original
he
film.
did, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the ones I've seen.
Yeah.
I think I've seen Nashville. I think I saw Nashville at the movies either side of 1980.
It's quite hard to find that movie, actually.
I was bored. But,
Yeah,
I
right.
was a lot younger as well. So I don't know that Altman's my guy, except the player. That, for me, is the big exception out of what I've seen.
Yeah.
And so I don't love Gosford Park. I like the acting. I therefore assume I like the direction in how it brings that out and makes it work. But
You know why I loved it?
I'm not
because it had
engaged.
emotion. It was a mystery with emotion.
Oh,
That's what I loved because it had a
okay.
lot of emotion
Okay.
in it. And it's interesting.
No.
Hang on.
No. It didn't have a lot of emotions.
No.
Some characters had emotions.
Yeah, that's right, but more than the other ones. The other films.
In fact, maybe only one or two characters had
Oh
emotions.
no! You saw them. They were feeling something. No. I disagree with you tonight. Because
I think a couple of the servants felt something, and that was it. None of the
servants.
None of the upper class.
No, you're right. No, the upper class didn't. You're right. It's the servants who
it worked to their advantage or destroyed their plans.
Who I
and that was
felt
it.
emotion for. Yeah, that's the servant
But
characters.
not a lot of them either. A lot of them was kind of like, oh yeah, they moved on, just like in Agatha Christie. I'm sorry, Ricardo.
I know.
So look,
What are you going to give this film?
no, I actually want to tell you something else first.
You tell me.
About the Oscars.
Sure.
So it won Best Original Screenplay. Both Helen Mirren and Maggie Smith were nominated for Best Supporting Actress.
Yes.
Which is a bit of a bummer because you're two people in the same category. They kind of, knock each other out, unfortunately.
Uh-huh.
But both were very good performances, I have to say. It was nominated for Best Director, and it lost to A Beautiful Mind.
Ron Howard.
But it was also up against Mulholland Drive, which we reviewed, I think, earlier this season, wasn't it?
Yeah, David Lynch.
And
Yeah.
it was nominated for Best Picture. Again, lost out to A Beautiful Mind, but it was also up against Moulin Rouge that we reviewed a year or two ago.
Yeah, which was nominated for Best Picture, but not Best Director.
I know. So I'm not sure it should have won the ones that it didn't win, but I think it had contenders that maybe should have overleaped them all.
I haven't seen A Beautiful Mind for a very long
No,
time.
I saw when it came out. I didn't love it.
Yeah, it's a bit schmaltzy for me.
Yeah.
It's okay.
All right, so here we go. I'm giving it 6 out of 10.
Oh.
Partly because it's not really whodunit, but it primes us to think it's going to be one. I think where it excels...
No, I think it's a lot better than that.
I think where it excels is as an actor's showcase. Oh, I haven't told you. I asked you before we came on mic. I said, do you know who was first supposed to play the Ryan Philippe character?
Who?
Jude Law.
Really? And
Yeah.
why did he pull it?
He could... Availability.
Scheduling, yeah.
I don't think Ryan Philippe's that great in this.
Oh, he's okay.
Not that great.
He's okay. I mean, he's up some great acting chops
he's
there.
He's up against the English powerhouse.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is a powerhouse of English
Yes. And I want to tell
actors.
you, when you went through your list of actors who are in this, and absolutely right, you missed someone.
Who?
It's a cameo. It's a blink or you miss it cameo right at the start of the film.
Thanks.
But I got a bit excited when I saw him. So at the very start, Kelly MacDonald is helping prepare the car with the chauffeur so Maggie Smith's character can go to this weekend.
Yes.
And the butler, who's called Burkett or something, the butler comes out and says something, like, are you done or hurry up or something.
Yes.
Did you recognise him?
No.
That's because you're too young. That was Frank Thornton.
Oh, really?
Captain
No,
Peacock.
no idea.
Captain Peacock from Are You Being Served? The original Are You Being Served?
Was it? Okay.
So a stalwart of 70s British comedy who's got this, I think he was 80 at the time, he's got this little bit part as a walk-on cameo, literally 1 or 2 lines. But my heart gave a little thrill when I saw him. I thought, it's Captain Peacock. And then it kind of fell over for me.
And that was it.
So 6 out of 10. What about you?
8 out of 10.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's beautifully made. I really enjoyed it. For all the way through it, I was there. It had me looking, had me listening, guessing. I loved all the upstairs, downstairs.
Did you think it was clever? Like you thought Agatha
Very
Christie's
clever.
was clever?
Very clever.
Not the film, the central mystery.
Less so. I think
Not actually made of it.
No, that's right. And
The whodunit here is a vehicle for something else.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah. Like I said, it's more down to a bit of a mystery.
I think the lack of whodunitness actually lets it down for me.
Yeah, okay.
Just one more thing before we move on from this film.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Jeremy Northam.
Yes.
What you didn't say is that he was actually playing a real life person, Ivan Novello.
Was he?
Yeah. So Ivan Novello. Go on. Sorry.
No, I was gonna see whether the whole film aspect of it was real.
No, as far as I know, he's the only real character.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like what Julian Fellows did in an episode of Downton Abbey, where he had a part that was Dame Nellie Melba, a well-known opera singer here who made it big at the time in the UK, and Dame Kiri Te Kanawa, the New Zealand soprano, played that part. But anyway, in this, Jeremy Northam plays Ivor Novello, who was a real person. He was Welsh actor, dramatist, singer, composer. So you see him singing. They're actually Ivor Novello songs that he was singing in the film.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
wow.
it's in the end credits. Yeah, but one of my favourite parts of the film was when all the staff were listening behind closed doors to him singing at one point.
Yes, that's right.
That was actually a magic moment in movies, I think.
Yeah.
Just pity the rest of it couldn't be like that. But anyway, moving on. But yeah, so, and I don't know that the Bob Balaban playing his producer friend, I don't know if he was a real character or if Ryan Philippe's character was, a real actor or not. But they kept talking about making this film Charlie Chan in London, and we're using the Country Weekend to kind of do research.
That's right.
And I checked, there is a film called Charlie Chan in London.
Yeah, wow.
1934. And the Charlie Chan movies, and if you don't know, Charlie Chan was this Oriental detective character. There was a film made in 1934. IMDb gives it 6.9 out of 10. Not bad.
Yeah.
For this story where Charlie visits a wealthy country home in England. Suspects in the murder range from a housekeeper to a stableman to a lawyer.
Yeah, okay.
So I think Altman and Balaban, who I think co-wrote the film, were riffing off this bit. And I actually loved the Novello scenes.
And the last film we are going to discuss
appropriately
is The Last of Sheila. Greg, tell us about it.
I've been wanting to get Ricardo to see The Last of Sheila for ages. So, full confession, this whole episode is basically just my Trojan horse to make that happen, which seems appropriate for an episode about bluffs and double crosses.
Yeah.
I've only actually seen this 1973 film once before, way back on late night TV in the 1980s, but it stayed with me, partly due to its 1970s star-studded cast, partly due to its whodunnitness, which is a word I've just copyrighted, and partly to its sheer sense of fun. But I was recently startled to learn that the film was co-written by composer Stephen Sondheim and actor Anthony Perkins of Psycho fame, an unlikely pairing in my mind, but they were actually good real-life friends.
Amazing. When I saw those credits roll up, I just went, what? What an odd... What? Is this a musical and a horror? What is this?
I didn't know that for decades.
No,
and for me, it's a whole other overlay of appreciation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, the reason it all came together is that Perkins and Sondheim used to create elaborate real-life murder mystery games for their show business friends in Manhattan in the 1960s, people like Lee Remick, George Segal, and so on. Sort of like a murder mystery party meets scavenger hunt meets escape room. So, this is right down my alley. According to the Crime Reads website, Sondheim was such a fan of crafting whodunnits that Anthony Schaefer based a central character on him in his play Sleuth.
Yeah, wow.
Which was originally called Who's Afraid of Stephen Sondheim? I thoroughly recommend Julia Sermon's 2021 Crime Reads article, but only after seeing the film. The idea for the movie grew out of these games, in which director-producer Herbert Ross had actually been one of the players with his wife. And the whole film is written as a game, with clues and jokes scattered throughout, beginning with the title, which itself is a play on words, except I can't explain that here without giving away the plot. Mm-hmm. And I was amazed when the central clue is explained, the first time I saw the film, that has been in the players' faces throughout the film. And I just kept wondering, would I have noticed that? And I'm not sure what I would have. Most of the action takes place on a Mediterranean yacht called Sheila, with the main cabin festooned with puzzles and games, such that when a character first comes into the room, they ask, who did this room, Parker Brothers? And I think you could ask the same question of the film's plot. Each round of the game is played on shore, a French coastal town, and then an atmospherically abandoned monastery. The aim of each round is to discover a player's assigned secret before they do. But the players start to question whether there's a deeper, nastier level to it all. Their ringmaster is Clinton, James Coburn, a Hollywood film producer whose gossip columnist wife, Sheila, died a year earlier in an unsolved hit-and-run accident. The players were all guests at that party. They include Richard Benjamin as a screenwriter and Joan Hackett as his wife. Now, Richard Benjamin was in so many films in the 70s, and you may remember at the start of this season that we reviewed Westworld. And he went on to direct such 80s hits as Mermaids, The Money Pit, and My Stepmother is an Alien. I suspect that Joan Hackett has sadly mostly been forgotten after dying quite young. The other players are James Mason as an ageing film director, Raquel Welch as an actress, with her manager husband, an incredibly young-looking Ian McShane,
Yes.
and Diane Cannon as a Hollywood agent. Diane Cannon's character is based on one of Hollywood's then famous agents, Sue Mengers. Mengers was offered the part herself, but she recommended her client, Diane Cannon, instead. That's practical business. Whether you enjoy this film or not will depend on whether you enjoy its gameplay. Certainly, it has its fans beyond me. For example, filmmakers Edgar Wright and Rian Johnson have praised it, with Johnson citing it as an inspiration for his whodunit films Knives Out and Glass Onion. And you can see the connection to Glass Onion in scenes where the guests arrive to board the Schiller yacht. It's worth noting that Glass Onion was Johnson's tribute to Stephen Sondheim, and in his last film appearance, Sondheim plays a group online game with Daniel Craig, Angela Lansbury, TV's Jessica Fletcher, and 2 other whodunit celebrities. So it's a nice send-off in a way. Ricardo, did you enjoy the game?
Yes and no. Mm-hmm. I thought it dated quite a bit. It had really that 70s feel and whatnot. Raquel Welch didn't. She was amazing. She looked glorious.
She actually hadn't gave a tough time on set.
Did she have a tough? Really?
Yeah, she accused someone. It might have been the director even. She accused someone of hassling her.
Wow.
And there was a bit of a falling out.
Oh, she's gorgeous though. I mean, she really is.
And so is
the screen.
So is Ian McShane. They're a gorgeous couple.
They are. And it's really interesting. Ian McShane. I've only seen him. I really had only seen him as an older actor.
More grizzled kind of.
Yeah, that's right. Like Deadwood and American Gods and
Gods. Yep.
Or John Wick. But he's just youthful and so young in this. But
you don't have a sense that he had a career. This is 1973. He had a career in the 70s.
The gameplay was fun. I agree with that. I found James Coburn to be just quite over the top. I really didn't like his performance at all. I like James Coburn. I actually think he's a very good actor. But in this, he was I just didn't like him on screen at all. But a lot of that sort of gameplay between each of the characters, but again, a lot of them just self-absorbed, selfish characters.
Yeah, but they're Hollywood types.
And that's
types, actually
right?
The characters.
It is, absolutely. So you sort of don't like anybody.
Well, I suspect it was a bit of a self-absorbed set because the history to the making of this is that they wrote the film and so on, and they were going to film it on a Mediterranean yacht, and just before they got there, the yacht sank. So they got another yacht, and they started filming, and then they found that it was impractical to film most of the scenes for the interior of the yacht. So then they had to stop, and they built a set in studios, I think in Nice, but the cast all had to hang around and do tough things like sunbathing and partying and so on for I think 4 to 6 weeks or something.
Yeah, right.
While they waited for the set to be built. So I think Raquel Welch was a bit of an outsider there for whatever set of reasons, but it was party time, and I listened to it part of a commentary, and they had a great time. So if anything, it kind of reinforced this kind of incestuous clique.
Yeah.
Of self-absorbed Hollywood types.
Yeah.
But I think they're less stereotypes than, say, Christie's one.
Yes.
There's more believability.
There is more believability, absolutely. And some of the... there was one of the characters that I felt probably the most for, but the other ones I really didn't care for. And that's the problem with me.
Was that Joan Hackett's character?
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to be moved. I like to get into character and whatnot. This is what I don't like about these sort of films, and it's the same with And Then There Were None. But I think you're right. I think I should be looking at them for the gameplay, because that is what they're there for. And for that, it's actually very good.
It's clever.
And it is clever.
And that central clue is jaw-droppingly great.
It is. It is. This one, I wasn't bored at all. I was watching it, just going, well, but I was getting annoyed by some performances and whatnot, and felt it was a bit dated filmically.
Look, it is a bit dated.
I thought there was actually more inventiveness in And Then There Were None than there was in
There has been talk
Sheila.
of a remake that kind of went nowhere.
Oh, right.
Yeah, like
okay.
5, 10, 15 years ago.
But filmically, I thought the 1945 film was a lot better than
You know,
even the 73.
I'd almost completely agree with you, except there was one shot. There's a shot where Diane Cann's character is floating on a lilo around the boat.
Yes.
And then someone turns on the propellers.
Yes.
And there's a shot where you see her on the lilo, arms and legs kind of dangling over the side.
Yep.
You know, we are underwater, if you like. And the propellers churning away, creating danger she's unaware of. It's very reminiscent of Jaws.
Yeah.
But it's 2 years prior.
Yeah, right.
I don't remember thinking that the first time I saw it. But this time around, I thought, I actually haven't seen Jaws.
Yeah, wow.
I've seen, scenes and so on.
There's a confession.
It I know. I'm not sure I want to watch it. But it's, it reminded me of that scene, the very first death in Jaws, where the naked woman swimming in the water.
Yes.
And there's that foreboding beneath.
Yes.
It's almost like it's the same director making those 2 shots or something.
Yeah.
And yet, that was very early, beginning to be successful Spielberg.
That was a brilliant sequence, actually.
Yeah.
It was a very good sequence.
Whereas this is Herbert Ross, who typically did more sort of musical comedy kind of stuff, lighter stuff. And, locating this film in the 70s, you talk about it being dated and so on.
Yeah.
And I locate my watching of it, let's say maybe either side of 1980, late night TV. This time there were jokes in it I didn't get because I was too young and naive to get them.
Right, yeah.
But there's a couple of jokes. They're jokes about queer. One character says to another, there's a lot of really handsome men in there, and this character is, very promiscuous.
Yeah.
And so she goes in all enthusiastic, and she suddenly realises she's in a lesbian bar, which is cued to you by the fact they're all women and the very severe haircuts.
Yes,
and whatever else.
yeah.
And that completely passed me by.
Yeah.
And the other one is a line that James Coburn says to Richard Benjamin. He says, patronise, are you sure that's the word you want? And the implication is it should have been sodomise,
Right.
And that is quite dated as well. And hopefully, we moved on from those kind of attitudes. So, there are elements, not just filmically, which, date. But
there was almost a fear of homosexuals. Or it was like a fear, like a really weird...
I'm going to spoil one little thing. So each of the characters have been given a secret, which is, a crime or something that, would destroy their careers.
Yes.
And one of those is homosexual.
That's right.
So in 1973, homosexuals being posited as something terrible on the same level as child molestation.
Yes.
Shoplifting, which is probably more of a misdemeanor, and so on. That, but that's maybe not a crime, but like a dark secret. And then it probably was, but, it'd be interesting if it were remade. I mean, you cut some of those elements out.
You would.
But how they would treat that. Would they set it back in 1973, or would they contemporise it somehow? I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't think it would work nowadays. We've grown up quite a bit since then.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah. Overall, I thought it was a clever ending.
Yep.
I enjoyed it.
I like the touches. Did you notice... first of all, I thought it actually really captured when you're kind of trapped with people for a period of time on a boat and you can hear through the walls and, it's a little bit too claustrophobic, particularly if you're not really, really tight. And they're all there because Coburn is a film producer and he has the ability... He's thinking of making a film about his wife, Sheila, and they all want to get on board and like either boost or resurrect their careers. The other thing I loved were the touches throughout, and I'm sure there's lots of clues and gameplay stuff that I've actually missed, and maybe I need to read a kind of an Easter egg guide or something. But did you notice that in the bedroom shared by Richard Benjamin and Joan Hackett, what was all over the cabin?
No.
Agatha Christie and Nia Marsh Whodunnit novels.
Oh, really?
Every shot in the cabin, you'd see 3,
right.
4, 5 or 6 of these things all just sort of stacked on a bookshelf or something.
Right. Yeah.
Which, again, was just a nice kind of, playfulness. And I think Whodunnits are not like... a murder show where it is much darker and grimmer and sometimes will touch on very dark themes. For me, a whodunit, as opposed to a murder kind of story, it is fun, intellectual puzzles, the challenge of getting it right, and the light touch. And again, I'll go back to Pity Yourself as Poirot as a prime example, and not just him, but the other characters. That's where it really works.
For all its datedness and everything like that, and I still thought the screenplay was very tight and added these elements of whodunit really well.
Do you know what the script writing process was?
What was this? What was that?
So Sondheim crafted the murder mystery. So basically created the plot and its structure and so on. And then Anthony Perkins came in and wrote a lot of the dialogue.
Oh, right.
That. And I know of at least one screenwriter couple who's followed a similar kind of approach. And so, it's interesting you've got these two people with complementary abilities. And I guess the surprising thing is they never did, as far as I know, they never did something again.
Oh, yeah,
like
right.
that. So what do you want to give it?
I'm giving it a 7.
I'm giving it 7.5.
Yeah, okay.
I kind of started edging up to about 8.
Oh, I wouldn't give it an 8.
But that's probably because, I love the genre. I think it does so well. But I feel like he's a bit more than a 7 for me. And again, this is my space.
It is, yeah.
So we're pretty close, actually, in fact.
Yeah.
I'm just nudging ahead of you. Look, it's not a great score, but I really say this is a great film to watch. And it's the one you've probably never heard of in the genre.
That's right. I think it's forgotten. You should watch it. Yeah.
And yet, as I say, it's influenced people who are now our generation of filmmakers, like Edgar Wright and Rian Johnson. And Johnson's paying such homage to it now. Oh,
well, look, not just in Knives Out and Glass Onion, but also Poker Face.
Yeah.
The series.
Well, yeah. And in fact, I didn't mention that in Glass Onion, the other two people playing the game with them, Angela Lansbury, Stephen Sondheim and Daniel Craig, were Natasha Lyonne, who was in Poker Face, the lead detective there. And the fourth one is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Now, a lot of people wouldn't know who that is. Americans might know him as a famous basketballer.
Yeah.
He played the black co-pilot in Flying High.
Yeah, that's right.
And the reason he was there, and I didn't know this, he was there because apparently he's written a series of books where Mycroft Holmes is the main character, Sherlock Holmes' brother.
Yeah.
So again, there's Glass Onion's got a whole lot of, pardon the pun, a whole lot of layers to it as well, which is The Last of Sheila, is these other things that obviously has a great, affection for. So I'm also, we're not actually reviewing, but I'll also recommend Glass Onion. There's a lot of fun there to be had as well.
I will watch that. Yeah, I've got to watch it. I like Knives Out, so I will watch that again. So that concludes our Whodunnit episode.
And we never actually said Whodunnit, which is probably
no, we didn't.
Probably a good thing.
And that's a good thing. No, please
go watch the films. You'll find out.
Yeah,
and you might even get it right,
and you'll have some fun.
Yes,
I think you'll have some fun with them. Yeah, I mean, it's always fun to try and work out who the murderer is in these films. I mean, it is fun.
Yeah, it's an intellectual game.
Yes, yeah. So our next episode, though, we're going to go from Whodunnits to Let's Get Italian.
Now, you just demonstrated why when we do this, you have to say all the actors' names for me, because you know how bad I am at it.
Of course, I'll do that, right?
Giacomo.
I'll do it in Italian accent the whole time.
There goes our listener base. So what will we start with?
Promise. I'll have some prosciutto.
Oh, my God. I just said I don't swear on the podcast, but I'm tempted.
Have some tortellini. We'll have some pasta.
Oh, so next time we're going to do Let's Get French. I've got half a fighting chance there.
So the first film we're going to be looking at
for Let's Get Italian, is
the 2015 film God Willing.
And then we're going to jump back to 1994 for Il Postino, The Postman.
Yeah, and then we're going to look at 1997's Life is Beautiful, La Vida è Bella.
And those last two did quite well at the Oscars too.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Look, I'm looking forward to...
Isn't it funny how our first film was called God Willing?
I'm looking forward to be Italian.
And I'm looking forward to find a substitute.
It's going to be wonderful. So that's going to be next time. Thank you, everybody, for listening and tuning in.
Yes, and, I'm really quite excited about moving from Whodunnit to Why Done It? Next time.
I will stop it. But thank you.
And sorry, just before we move on, I should say, too, there's going to be something very special about next time as well. We're planning something I'm actually really excited about for our last episode of the season, like we usually do each season.
Yes.
And it has a bit of can I say foreplay?
Yeah.
For episode 10 of this season that we'll cover off in episode 9.
That's right. So next time.
So get excited, folks.
That's
Can
right.
you say that in Italian?
Get excited.
Folks.
Folks? I'm like the folks.
Fuck off.
No, I don't know. But thank you for listening.
And, come back for episode 9 and find out how I'm going to get to replace me.